For the first, 8, 9, even 10 months of Trump's second term, the Democrats had no message whatsoever. We talked about that repeatedly together. And what they've coalesced around, in particular since the government shutdown, which started on October 1st, is two things: healthcare and affordability. The Democratic Party is so far underwater with the American public on immigration that they haven't made that a core message. As you spread around to individual cities, now that ICE is in New Orleans and Chicago and parts of California and other places, you're seeing the local politicians try to step up to some extent. But the national message from the Democratic Party is going to perennially be, for this year and 2026, affordability and healthcare, and they're going to stick to it.
So on that rung here, what's the to-do list for this Congress going forward? Does the Democratic Party have any say here, or is it really just continuing the Trump administration and its playbook?
It's going to be affordability and healthcare all day, every day. So this week we'll talk about the ACA subsidies. They're going to try to get a 3-year extension of those subsidies, which impact about 22 million Americans. There's going to be 4 million people that lose their health care coverage altogether when these expire on December 31st. And what the shutdown did is it exacerbated the issue of health care for the American public. And the issue itself rose in prominence along with, you guessed it, affordability and inflation. Mm-hmm. So as long as they stick to those three narratives, whether anything gets done or not is not particularly relevant to the Democrats. Their messaging on this and going into 2026 midterms, they feel like they're very well positioned to keep the hammer on the Republicans who are in charge. And so they're saying, if you're in charge, you're the one holding the bag here. Let's get something moving. And Republicans are not feeling any pressure from the White House to capitulate on any of the core issues associated with the ACA subsidies expiring. And of course, they're not able to get through an agenda which has more rolling out for the American consumer on the affordability front.
How about tariffs going to the affordability issue derivatively? Tariffs, we're going to hear from the Supreme Court at some point. Can you give us an update there?
Sure, happy to. We are at 65% odds that the Supreme Court will agree with the two lower courts who have decided that the president does not have the authority to impose tariffs without getting approval from Congress. This is straight, Article 1, Section 8 stuff. In the Constitution, Congress creates new taxes, and the president has levied taxes on that amount to $3 trillion worth of collection on the importing basis. So the Supreme Court's going to rule potentially as early as this week. There's a lot of speculation that it'll come December 10th because they're hearing oral arguments. Wow. I would say there's a disconnect between the street and D.C. right now, where the street is expecting this to come, the decision to come in the first quarter of next year. And in D.C., a lot of us are expecting it by year end. And so it's impossible to narrow down when the Supreme Court will actually rule. But there's a lot of conjecture around December 10th, which is, of course, this week. So fingers crossed on that one.
Henrietta, before you go here, I saw a line. It was almost tragic. A food pantry line in Prestonburg, Kentucky. This is 190 miles east of Lexington, past the Henry Clay estate. Donald Trump took 79% of the votes in a quick look at Floyd County, Kentucky, and the food court lines are stretched out to the parking lot, to the sidewalk, to the road. Do those people blame their president, Donald Trump?
I don't think that they blame the president. They like the president so much. But what the quiet part is that they're not going to vote for the Republican conference after Trump is gone, and they probably will go back to not voting. That's the fear of a lot of Republican lawmakers. And you can see that exact same story. You mentioned a food pantry. How about I think it's about 160,000 folks in northern Michigan who are going to be paying $4,500 more for electricity after President Trump refused to provide FEMA relief to them for electrical damage that happened in last year. So there's all these little pockets, the farmers getting a $12 billion bailout because of the president's trade war. It's really a difference between Trump and the rest of the Republican conference. And what elections show is that people will turn out for Trump and then they leave the ballot box and they don't vote down ballot. And that's something to be wary of.
We need to talk to you 8 times before the end of the year. Henrietta Treyz, thank you so much. With Veda Partners.